I'm here today with Susan K. Williams Smith. Susan is an ordained minister, musician, writer, and activist living in Columbus, Ohio. She's written for the Washington Post and Huffington Post, as well as her blog, Candid Observations. She currently serves as one of the tri-chairs for the Ohio Poor People's Campaign, a national call for moral revival. She also serves as a national scribe for the African American Ministers Leadership Council, as communications consultant for the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, and is the founder of Crazy Faith Ministries. She's a graduate of Occidental College and Yale Divinity School, and entered a D-Min from United Theological Seminary. And she also has a new book coming out. The release date, I think, is Tuesday, October 19th. The title of the book is With Liberty and Justice for Some: The Bible, the Constitution, and Racism in America. And I really want to read the book description of this book because I think it's just really powerful. In this provocative new book from prophetic preacher and pastor Susan Williams Smith, the author tackles the truths that church in the United States has long held to be self-evident: that ours is one nation under God, that our U.S. Constitution is almost as infallible as the Holy Bible, and that democracy and its principles of justice for all are sacrosanct and protected by both God and government. Yet, history and headlines alike expose the fallacy of those assumptions, particularly when viewed in the light of a national culture of white supremacy and systemic racial injustice. In fact, Smith argues, the two texts we count as sacred have not merely been impotent in terms of eliminating racism, they have been used to support and sustain white supremacy. This important work examines how our foundational documents have failed people of color and asks the question, can those whom a nation has considered we the problem ever become we the people, who are celebrated in the preamble of the Constitution? What will it take to reclaim the transforming and affirming power of God and government to secure liberty and justice for all? So all I can say for that is, wow. So Susan, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for asking me. I appreciate it.
Well, it's my pleasure to be able to meet you and to learn about this book. I'd love for you to just expand a little bit on the introduction. Let folks know, kind of more about who you are and the other books that you've written, things like that.
Okay. Well, I grew up in church. Grew up in church, went to Sunday school, and always loved the words of the Bible. And had a mother who really, drummed into us that, that you got to do what Jesus says to do. And so, for instance, when the civil rights stuff, the violence was going on in Birmingham, Alabama, and I was really little, but I remember seeing the dogs and the hoses on television, and my mother, I can remember the day like it was yesterday, my mother hollered out from the kitchen, yeah, and you got to love them anyway, which perplexed me because I didn't know why anybody would tell anybody to love somebody that was doing that kind of stuff. So anyway, as I, went through, grew up and listened to all these people calling themselves Christian, white and black, I thought something is amiss here, because racism was profound. It was profound in terms of the actions and the attitudes and the speech of these white people that I knew who said they were Christian. And I didn't understand how that could be the case. And then, of course, we grew up with the words of the Constitution, more the words of the Declaration of Independence, that all men are created equal and that they are endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And I was looking, I said, there is something wrong. So, but what really got me is I was thinking one day, I was reading something, I don't remember what it was, but they're talking about a specific lynching. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that something is wrong when a people can call themselves Christian, a religion which is based on love and the formation of the beloved community, when a people can call themselves Christian and lynch somebody on a Saturday night, in my own mind, lynch somebody on a Saturday night and then go to church the next morning and serve communion. I thought something's wrong. Something is wrong here. And then as I thought about it I thought about how people, they call themselves patriots, and they waved the American flag, but the flag represented a break away from a type of government that was oppressive, and this government was gonna be, of the people, by the people, for the people, and it's not anywhere near that. But yet they wave the flag, and I'm thinking, well, I don't know what Christianity is, and I don't know what patriotism is, because there's definitely a break. And so then I came to a conclusion that many people are religious, but not necessarily Christian. Many people go to church, they do, and they celebrate the birth and the resurrection of Jesus the Christ. They do that because those are good commercial holidays. I'm sorry to sound so cynical, but they are. But in between, it's like the dash days. If you were born in 1920 and you die in 1980, what did you do in those dash days? The dash days phenomenon of people who call themselves Christian, that report, the dash report, I guess you would say, it's not so good, because people discriminate and hate and kill and all that while they call themselves Christian. There's something wrong with that. So I just decided to kind of look into it more, because it seems to me that when you have words like that are found in the Bible, and many people who go to church don't even go to the Gospels. They read the epistles of Paul, but that's their Bible. And so almost exclusively. So when you go and you really read the Gospels, when you really read like the Sermon on the Mount, and you see what Jesus said to do, that something is amiss. So I just wanted to explore it. I wanted to see, the evolution. I wanted to see what the history was. And I'm not a historian, but I wanted to just put my foot in enough water in different areas, so that people, if I put it in the book, people might be inspired to look and see, how it is we came to be at this point. To me, it's a fascinating story. And to me, I concluded that we don't have one God in America. Christians don't have one God. You got one God for Black people and one God for white people, one God for Black people, because they're not the same. They don't intersect even. That's what made me start writing the book.
Yeah, well, I mean, a lot of profound but true observations as far as I can tell. Tell us a little bit more about the things that you've done before this book, because I know you've written some other books, right. And obviously you've been an activist, you're an ordained minister.
Right. Well, I went to Yale Divinity School. I was a reporter, actually, before I went to the ministry. And I was working in Baltimore, and then I moved to Texas, and then I went back to Yale. I went to Yale Divinity School. And I worked under the tutelage of Jeremiah Wright for a while. I was an associate minister at Trinity United Church of Christ.
Okay.
And then I came here to Columbus, and I was a pastor here for 22 years. And now I've left that, and I have this nonprofit called Crazy Faith Ministries. And we do church services, but we do church services where we want to do church services. We're not like in a specific building. We do a lot of outreach to the least of these, which is like in my blood to do that. And we do a lot of social justice work. And so right now, we're very heavily involved in getting the people registered to vote and getting them out to vote and doing voter education and all that. So I do a lot of social justice work in general, but this is the season for voting. So that's the work that we're doing right now. We collect socks for the homeless. Sometimes when I think about the things we do, I just have to laugh, because there's so little. So many churches do these humongous things. We don't do humongous things. We do these little things like collecting socks for the homeless. And last year or the year before on Thanksgiving, we were walking around the streets in Columbus, and we had fixed Thanksgiving dinner and put them in bags, because a lot of people will not or cannot go to like the churches or the shelters that are giving Thanksgiving dinner. So we took these dinners in a bag and socks. And it just got to me where we would give the people the bags of dinners and they were grateful. But when we gave them the socks, many of them broke down and wept. I thought, oh, okay, that's what we'll do. So I think that in my own heart, there's just this need. The words of the Bible just inspire me, and I think that any of us could be one of the least of these in a New York second, especially now with the economy, so bad. I mean, it scares me. It scares me to see people laying out in the streets in winter on pieces of cardboard. Just, something is wrong with that, especially in this, the most wealthy nation in the world. So that's what we do. So this book is the, I don't know, sixth, seventh, I don't know which number it is. Last year around this time, I had a book come out called Rest for the Justice Seeking Soul. Every Tuesday, I do something called a Tuesday meditation. I started doing that some years ago when I was reading Reverend William Barber's book, The Second Reconstruction. And he said in that book how he explained how his grandmother would on Sundays take food left over from dinner, and she and her friends in the neighborhood would go out with all this food. And he said that she said, we're going to go help somebody. And he thought that she meant to say help, but she really did mean hope. And so that just kind of got my interest. And so I started writing meditations on a Tuesday. So every Tuesday I write these meditations to kind of inspire and help people who are doing social justice work. That was last year that came out. So, and then before that, there was Crazy Faith, Ordinary People, Extraordinary Lives, and a book called Forgive Who, and another one called From Calvary to Victory. So I've written a couple of books.
Very cool. Very, very wonderful. Since you're Trinity Connection, you might know, I'm sure you know a couple of the folks who have been heavily involved in some of the stuff I've done. Frank Thomas.
Absolutely. He's a good friend.
He was a speaker, one of the speakers at the first Publishing in Color conference we did.
Oh, okay.
And he's also spoken at the Writing for Your Life conferences. In fact, we did one in conjunction with the seminary where he works in Indianapolis, Christian Theological Seminary.
Right.
And then also Otis Moss III now has been involved in the Compassion Christianity work that I've done in different ways. So, we have some very good common connections there.
Yeah, that's great.
So you're in Columbus, Ohio, it sounds like now. So a lot of the work that you do is kind of on the ground there, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is. It is, especially in the pandemic. We've been doing, I have a friend of mine, she's a UU minister, but we were working with Poor People's Campaign and decided that we wanted to be engaged in this election in a different way. And she and I were having a conversation one day, and I said, you know what, Joan, we need to do some stuff. We need to step out and we need to have conversations with people that nobody ever talks to. Nobody pays attention to them. I said, because I think people, when they don't vote, it's because they think they don't matter and they think their vote won't matter. So we decided we were going to do these community conversations, and we were going to get in our cars and we were going to drive all around the state of Ohio. We were going to go to places, cities, towns, where we normally would not have gone, and just sit down with people and have conversations. And I was so convinced that it was something we should do that I told her, I said, I'll even go to Appalachia, but I'm not going by myself. I need somebody white to go with me, because I don't want to be lynched just because I'm trying to have conversations with people. But this is what I know. I know that no matter who you are, no matter your color, your ethnicity, no matter who you are, there is a common something in all of us called humanness. And the things that we ache about no matter who we are. And I said to Joan, I said, that's what we need to do. We need to find out what people are aching about. And in so doing, kind of dissolve some of the capacity to be so tribal. So then the pandemic came, and we couldn't drive around the state. So we've been doing these virtual community conversations around the state. And now we're going into, now that the voter registration in Ohio, the voter registration deadline has come and gone. Now we're having community conversations on how to vote and what's bothering you, and what's, because some people are still thinking that they're not going to vote. So we're having community conversations now to, hear people and hopefully get them to understand how important their vote is. If they didn't count, there wouldn't be so many efforts to keep people from voting. And that's the thing that we tell them, and we tell them that they have power. The powers that be and work to make us think that we don't have power. I just read something yesterday that Robert Louis Stevenson said that what you are becoming is the sole purpose of life itself. And so we just shared with people that you are becoming. And when any of us decide to leave the riffraff in terms of the ideologies that we're given and fed, when we decide to leave that behind and kind of tap into the well of power that we have within ourselves, lives can change. And so that's what we're trying to tell people. And to try to get them to understand that they do have power and every single vote counts, and they are needed. Some people don't feel needed for any reason. They don't feel needed. Our conversations are designed to make people understand that they are needed.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, you're doing a lot of amazing work. What are your hopes for the book, the new book, that how that will impact our country and our society?
Well, I hope everyone will read. I think it's a good resource. I think it's in terms of what it offers. I think it offers a lot of um, information that I hope will inspire people to read and study more on their own. One of the things that I know is that people don't know history. I mean, if I thought that what's going on now was the only time this kind of stuff had happened, I'd be totally depressed. But when I read back in history and I see how we've had just horrible times in the past, and some of them bordering on maybe even worse than this, and we got through it, it gives you strength. So I'm hoping that people will read this. I'm hoping that everybody who reads it will come away one day at least and say, I didn't know that. I hope there's something in this book that will make people say, I did not know that, and then inspire them to read more, because I think the more you read, the more you know, the more equipped you are to handle what I call the dumb stuff. This is dumb stuff, but it's based on the quest for power and a belief by the power system that people are ignorant. And I want us to not be ignorant. I want us to be equipped with knowledge so that we can fight, in the way that we can fight and bring about, respect the dignity of people and the talent of people, and not give in to people in power just because they have money. And we always say that organized people will beat organized money every time. So we have to understand and get people organized and let them move in that organized way so that they can see that they have power. We need for people to understand this election that they do have power. We need for them to use it, and we need for them to use it in such a way that there can be no no court fights, because the results are just, flat out flat. So that's what I'm hoping. I hope that people will read it and pick it up and say, I did not know that, and then want to read more. That's the biggest. And I hope everybody, hope it goes all over the world. I do. Alan Bosak, who's a friend of mine, actually wrote like an endorsement of it. And I hope that it'll go to places where, because this type of oppression, the racial oppression, sexual oppression, all of that, which, both the Bible and the Constitution should make, moot. It's going on all over the world. So I'm hoping that people in different places all over the world will read it and be inspired by it, and, be inspired to do greater things in their lives.
So I know it's a little bit difficult to think past the election right now, but I feel as though there's going to be a lot of healing required.
Oh, yeah.
Healing our divides, whether it's a racial divide or political divide or other kinds of divides. Do you have any thoughts on actions that either we as individuals or organizations can take to help heal some of those divides?
Well, I think, ironically, I was thinking about that last night. That we are going to have what I call difficult conversations with each other. I always hate when people say we won't have a safe conversation about, usually it's a safe conversation about racism, but we need to have some just human to human, heart to heart conversations, because people are wounded on a number of different levels. This nation is, there's so many people who are grieving. Loved ones died because of the coronavirus. They couldn't be with their loved ones. How do you get through that? How do you had to see your loved one for the last time via a FaceTime phone call? You know what? That's doing something to this nation that we've not even begun to address. So we've got the coronavirus. We've got this new, I don't want to say if it's new, but a heightened awareness of racial injustice. And that's, the anger and the hurt of the African-American community is deep. And so they've got, in our community, we got to heal not only from the deaths and the loss of jobs, because there's a lot of loss of loved ones, loss of jobs, loss of homes. That is a lot of grieving. But we also have to mourn the loss or the continued loss of, or the evasion of justice for us. So I think that there's going to have to be a lot of conversations. And I also think that people are going to have to be able to be in a space where they can say honestly what they feel. Let me give you an example. Somebody called me the other day and said, I don't know what to say. She said, my mom said, when I was little, she said, my mother said, don't wish anybody dead. She says, but I don't like this president and I don't want to see him dead, I guess. She said, but I want something to happen to him. And I said, you need to be able to say that out loud. I think that there's such, we want to, pretend that we are okay inside, and we are not. We are not. And I think there needs to be a space where we can share that. You know what it's like? It's like when you're in church, when you are involved in church and you're having a faith crisis, you don't dare share that with the saints because they will, lay hands on you or, think that something's wrong with you when in fact, many people are in faith crises. So you don't say it, you don't share it, but then it's in you and it messes with you. It messes with your capacity to even breathe a clean breath because your pain is it's so thick inside. So I think we're going to have to create spaces where we have conversations the likes of which we've never had before. We're going to have to admit what we feel. We're going to have to say out loud and be safe that I know this is not a good thing to say, but this is what I feel. And maybe if we can get some of that stuff out, we can give our spirits enough room to receive like a spirit of God inside of us so that we can begin to heal. Lots of healing has to be done.
Absolutely. And I want to follow up with you later about this question too. But for now, I think, as you know, a lot of the folks in our audience are relatively new writers.
Mm.
And so I hope they're inspired by what you've done, both in your book and beyond. But what advice do you have for folks who, would like to kind of follow in your footsteps or, write some of the difficult things that you've written?
Well, the first thing is that you have to write every day. You have to write if you feel like it, and you have to write especially when you don't feel like it. I write for my blog, but I also write for a couple of newspapers, and some days I am just not feeling it. I mean, some days I sit down at my laptop and I'm thinking, I just don't have anything to say, but you have to push yourself. And I've been told that if you don't do anything but write one sentence, that you write it down, but you have to write every single day, and it is a discipline. I know that when deadlines are coming up for this book and for others, when I could find any and everything to do except write. You sit down and finish the writing because I just didn't want to do it. But it's a discipline. So if you, for instance, have you can block off a block of time and say that every day I'm going to give this writing thing 2 hours. I don't know what you'll come up with. You don't know what you'll come up with, but you'll come up with something. And if it's nothing more than a word, sometimes you're going to be thinking and a word will just stick with you. Write it down. You think you're going to remember, but you don't. Or it might be just that one sentence I talked about. Write it down because that means that something in your spirit is ruminating over that. That's wrestling with that. So you write it down and then you come back, but you must do it every single day. The second thing is when you submit manuscripts, and you got to be very careful about submitting manuscripts to publishers who are interested in what you are writing. You can just take all the joy out of your effort if you submit a manuscript to a publisher that doesn't take what you're writing. So you have to do some research on the publisher. But when you get rejection notices, because you will, don't let it stop you. Yeah, just don't let it. Rejection is part of the process. I'm sorry, and sometimes it's just heartbreaking. Well, many times it's heartbreaking, but you have to keep on because I'm going to assume that if you want to write, it's something in you. It's like a bubbling inside you, and you dare not stop the bubbling just because you get a rejection notice. So those would be the biggest things that I would recommend.
Excellent advice. No question about that. And, I've heard similar kinds of things on the rejection front,
Oh,
across the spectrum. I mean, everyone's experienced that in spades. So,
yeah.
well, Susan, I really appreciate you taking some time to, let us learn about you and what you've done. And I thank you for that. And thank you for this book. I'm really looking forward to reading it.
Thank you. I hope that you like it. Like I said, I'm a little nervous because, I have a lot of friends who are scholars. I'm not a scholar. I just love history, and I want there to be a sense of connectedness for where we are here, why we are where we are now based on where we've come from. And I'm hoping that it'll just inspire people to want to know more and more and more. Because I think the more we understand, the less angst we'll have. And the more we will be equipped to fight the battles that we will always have to fight, because injustice never goes away. But you fight it a little differently if you have some history behind you. So I hope that's what it does.
Well, as you point out very starkly, there's this huge incongruity between, the Bible and the Constitution and the way our country and our society have been.
Right.
So whatever we can do to try to close that gap,
Absolutely.
remove that incongruity and maybe hopefully all, live like real Christians, like Jesus intended.
Right.
What a concept. So
Right.
let's hope that, what you're doing can move the ball a little bit in that direction.
I hope so.